everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about what led me to move to Spain. So let's get started. Alright, so it all started back in 2019. I started studying a Bachelor of Languages and Linguistics, and I was studying Spanish. I was really motivated in my first year, and I ended up signing up for a volunteer study abroad program teaching English in Peru. And before I left, I had been getting really good grades in Spanish, even though it was like A1 and A2. And yeah, I was excited to put my language skills to the test.
However, when I got there, I realized just how bad my level really was. I arrived 2 weeks early with my best friend from uni. Luckily, she spoke Spanish, much better than me. But I was relying on her for everything, and I was very quickly realizing that all of this grammar studying that I had been doing did not translate into me being able to speak to people and form the sentences that I wanted to say. But yeah, so it was a great trip, and towards the end I was actually able to communicate in a pretty important context. I actually had to go to hospital. I got salmonella developed halfway up a very big mountain, and I ended up projectile vomiting everywhere and having to be emergency evacuated in an ambulance. And that ambulance took 4 hours to get down that mountain, that very rocky mountain. So I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was very distressing. But luckily when I got to the hospital, I was able to communicate my basic needs. I was able to ask them questions about what was happening to me, and processes that they needed to do for me. So yeah, I was very surprised actually how far I'd come in just 4 weeks of being there, just practicing speaking every day. And so one of my huge takeaways from that trip, well, I had many takeaways, but one of the biggest ones was that I really wanted to study abroad, and I would need to immerse myself in a language and a culture to achieve the level of fluency that I wanted in Spanish. So okay, so anyway, the trip came to an end. It ended really well. I got to see the Amazon rainforest among many other really cool things. And then, so I got back to Australia, kept studying, and in 2020, I applied for an exchange program in Granada, Spain. And I was thrilled. I was so excited. And I was convinced that if I simply just thrust myself into Spain, I would magically be able to get the hang of Spanish linguistic concepts in my second language. And yeah, I was really excited. And then the pandemic hit and all the study abroad programs were cancelled with my university. Most were cancelled Australia-wide as well. And yeah, so my dreams of living abroad and studying in Granada were squashed, and I had to just refocus on studying and working to stay afloat. Yeah, so then, fast forward to 2021, I graduated from my Bachelor of Languages and Linguistics with a major in Spanish. And well, on paper, supposedly I had a C1 in Spanish grammar, but again, my speaking was always the problem. But yeah, I graduated, and I graduated with great marks. And I ended up being so disappointed because I couldn't even attend my graduation ceremony because one of my co-workers got COVID, and I had to stay inside my home for 2 weeks doing government mandated self-isolation, as did my housemate, which was, yeah, that was tough. So yeah, I remember being really bummed out because I had achieved something great, I had achieved something really cool, and it was really meaningful and big for me, and I felt that I had no real way of actually celebrating it. So yeah, but at least during this time I had a lot of free time in those 2 weeks of staying in my house. I applied for a lot of teaching abroad programs, English teaching programs. I was looking into work visas, student visas, digital nomad visas, everything. I was in full research mode. And yeah, so I did some applications for language assistant programs, for teaching assistant programs, conversation assistant programs like auxiliar de conversación here. And yeah, I ended up landing on one program that had like a TEFL course, a teaching English as a foreign language course, and Spanish classes. So yeah, so then I was just gathering my documents, applying for my visa, and yeah, getting health insurance, all of that stuff, and just tying up loose ends in Australia. Yeah, so all that was left was for me to just work as hard as possible and save as much money as possible to be able to set myself up in a new country. Because yeah, I was moving, not knowing anyone in the city, like no one in Madrid and no one in Spain, actually, for that matter. So more on that in another video. Yeah, worth mentioning as well is like at this point in my life, I was incredibly burnt out and in desperate need of a change of scenery. I was so excited at the prospect of moving to a new place where no one knew me and I could start fresh and I could be whoever I wanted to be. And, additionally, it had been a lifelong dream of mine to live abroad and to learn another language, and I just started to realize that I was not going to be able to do that in my same context in Australia that I had always been in. Also, I had dedicated 3 years of my life to this linguistics degree and spent so many wonderful lectures or like hangouts outside of class talking about culture and language and identity and how they're all inextricably linked. And I just needed more of that. I wanted to meet more people from different countries, from different cultures. I wanted to see different identities, see if I had a different identity, And, there's a common concept in like language learning or language acquisition, linguistics, that if you, that's definitely staying in. Yeah, so there's this concept in language acquisition that if you have access to more than one language, you are granted access to more than one culture, more than one identity, more than one way of thinking. Because language is inextricably linked to identity and culture. And it's great, like your mind starts to expand. You meet other people, different ways of thinking, and yeah, that's what it's all about, really.
After months of working really, really hard and getting everything in order, the day finally arrived, and suddenly I was on a long-haul flight with just 2 suitcases and a backpack, and yeah, about to start a huge new chapter of my life. For the first 6 months here, I did several different gigs just to stay afloat. I worked as an au pair, a nanny, I did private classes, I did online classes, I finished my TEFL course that I had to study, I started studying my Spanish classes as well, and eventually I landed in a summer camp. And thank God, because I was really running out of money at that point. It was a live-in camp, and that is a whole nother video in itself as well. But in this camp, I was able to meet my friend who was in a language assistant program. She introduced me to the program, and I applied, and I got in. And gosh, I remember the joy the day that I got the email that I got in. I was a late accepted applicant because somebody else had cancelled. And wow, it really was life-changing for the trajectory of my career. I'm getting lost in the source of where I'm up to in this story. Anyway, so my program was a 4-year program, maximum 2 years in each school. So once I finished up at my first school, the primary school, with a little bit of infantil kindergarten teaching, I moved to full 24 hours with infantil, with kindergarten. And I love my current school so much. I am not emotionally prepared to say my goodbyes to them at the end of my 2-year placement. So in a lot of ways, I really do feel that I have achieved what I set out to achieve here. I've learned another language, I've traveled heaps, I have progressed my career in a way that was really unexpected, but has been very useful, actually. However, living abroad, it's not for the weak. It is really not for the weak. There have been many times here where it has felt like obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. I've questioned my karma, I've questioned my luck, and I've had to develop a seriously good sense of humor. Although things have been really tough here sometimes, I have become so resilient, and I look back at younger versions of myself, and I really think some of the truly ridiculous and unlucky things that have happened to me here, gosh, a younger me would have simply just thrown in the towel. But yeah, despite the hardships, I've really just become like a cat, actually. I always land on my feet, and I seem to have 9 lives. 10, maybe 15, who knows? So yeah, things that used to absolutely rattle me now don't really faze me much anymore, if at all. And all of these things that I had convinced myself that I was incapable of doing, I have shown myself over and over and over again that I can. Also, like, I would like to think that I had a pretty wicked sense of humor before I left Australia, but it's like reached another level because sometimes here, all you can do is make a joke or laugh about just the ridiculousness of living in a different culture and speaking your second language. And also, you start to notice not just the things that you like and dislike about the country that you're in, but also the things you like and dislike about the country that you're from. And I think in my case, it was a bit of that, old saying, grass is always greener on the other side. Grass is not always greener on the other side, and grass is greener where you water it, as they say. But yeah, it's taken me a lot of time, but I can really appreciate where I'm from now in a way that I really couldn't back in 2022. I really left Australia burnt out and quite bitter at my situation. And yeah, it's taken some time away to realize that, yeah, I really appreciate where I'm from. Of course, the best thing is not the traveling, the historic buildings, the food, the weather, etc. The best thing is the people you meet along the way. And these people have left and will continue to leave a mark on my life that is difficult to put into words, but I'm going to give it a go. So obviously it's not been perfect. I've had my fair share of friendship breakups, a romantic breakup, but the ones that have stuck around are truly some of the most meaningful relationships I've ever had in my life, and have shown me a level of love and support that in some cases I was not familiar with before living here. But yeah, even the connections that didn't last or people that didn't stick around, they've still impacted me in a positive way, and I've learnt lessons, and like I've grown from these things that haven't worked out as well.
I have met so many wonderful people from so many different countries and walks of life, and I honestly can't imagine having it any other way if I had my time over. So my advice is, if you're thinking of moving abroad, more specifically to Madrid or to Spain, I say just do it. If you have the financial means and you have friend or family support, just do it. Just do it, because it's amazing, and it really is such a delightfully irreversible process in your life that will mark you forever, and it really could change the trajectory of your life as it did mine. So yeah. Okay, so this is the end of the video. I hope you liked it, and this has been why I moved to Spain. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.